Hello, Garland Nixon here. And of course, we all know the big story that a move was made by apparently, we're seeing some young mentally ill guy, but there are a lot of questions that people have as to who could be behind it. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and let's talk about the Trump situation. Um, I'm sure by now, if you haven't been living under a rock, and even if you have been living under a rock, that you know what happened with Trump. You know that there was an attempt on his life. I'm not going to get into in depth the actual incident. I'll brush on it, but let's face it, everybody has their thoughts on it. I'll give you the basics of it, and that is, the guy was that did the shooting was 20 years old. And a couple of quick things, and I'm going to make this quick. I don't want to get into that, but so long. He was 20 years old. There was some kids that was interviewed that said, things that would lead you to believe that he could be mentally disturbed. The usual. He was a loner and he was a bullied and things of that nature. Okay. So there's stuff there that could lead you to say he was a lone wolf, loner, blah, blah, blah. But there were unanswered questions at the scene, such as there were several buildings there and there were snipers or shooters or spotters on all of the buildings, apparently except one. And for some reason, there was a ladder at that one building, or maybe he brought a ladder, but some kind of way this guy accessed a ladder to climb up on a building that gave him a direct line of sight to the platform upon which Donald Trump could be standing. That's weird. You know what I mean? Somehow he was fortunate enough to choose the only building that nobody was on. He couldn't see on top of the buildings. How would he know that this one building would be the one that nobody was on? And why would there be a ladder there? Or did he bring his own ladder? And nobody looked around and said, hey, there's a ladder there at that building. Hey, there's some guy climbing up the ladder. It never dawned on anybody that perhaps somebody could use a ladder to climb up on that building. And strange. A lot of really strange things. And, my background in law enforcement, I have, in fact, let me tell you, I've been involved in that. I've worked with Secret Service. When Dick Cheney had a house in the Easton area in this community, believe it or not, the community that, again, so from my history, he had, it was when George W. Bush was president, the Secret Service came in and said, hey, when Dick Cheney comes here on the weekends, we have to be, protect the area, and it's on the water. And I was I was a major at that time. I was assistant commander of field ops for that part of the state. I had half of the state. We had a lieutenant colonel who was in charge of the state for field ops, and then we had two majors. Guy named Mark Sanders was in charge of one half of the state. I was in charge of the other half of the state. And so when they said, well, Dick Cheney has bought this house in this community, interestingly enough, the community was built on the plantation that Frederick Douglass escaped from when he was a slave. That's where he lived. How weird is that? But at any rate, I'm not lying. How else would I know that? And a number of other people in the Bush administration had houses in that community. And so what they said was, the Secret Service needs a plan for when Dick Cheney comes here for the weekends at his weekend house. So it'll be secure and blah, blah, blah. And I was one of the people. We brought in the local fire, ambulance, you name it, police, all sheriff's department, everybody, and us, and Secret Service, you name it. And we put forward this gigantic plan for just whichever weekends Cheney came. The water, the ocean, I had police boats under me, right? So we had to have police, we had to have the plans. Trust me, it wouldn't have been easy for somebody sniper to get on a roof of barn somewhere and get a shot at Cheney when he went out. We looked at all of that stuff. So I'm like, that's interesting because they were quite competent and able to ensure that nobody plugged Cheney. And Trump's there on a given weekend. You know what time he's going to be there? He's there for a limited number, not probably less than an hour. I don't know. And you're going to be there 2 weeks beforehand. You're going to be going over everything. You're going to be mapping out the places. You're going to have satellite views. And for some reason, they missed this friggin' building and a ladder was leaning against it. And a bunch of people, hey, there's a gunman on the roof. And they're like, gunman on the roof. Okay, I have nothing to see here. Keep going. I'm not saying that the Secret Service was involved or that they weren't involved. I'm just saying, based on my background of having worked on presidential security arrangements, seems a little out of character that they missed a freaking roof and the building had a ladder leaning against it. And that people were like, hey, there's a gunman on the roof. And they were like a bit slow to respond. You got to say to yourself, to be quite frank, the first thing that popped into my mind, be honest with you, Ukraine. Ukraine's got this. I'm not saying that anybody did or didn't do it. I'm telling you at the time that this happened, and I'm not going to go too long with this. I don't want to say and repeat what everybody else has said, right? So I'll just say the things that popped into my mind. I thought to myself, self, they got this website called Mirrored Vets. And this website, they put names of lots of Americans and other people who don't want to go along with, hundreds of billions of dollars going to Ukraine. And now I suspect that the fact that these oligarchs are pilfering every filthy, stinking dime of it could have something to do with that. They have a financial investment, shall we say, a fiduciary connection to U.S. policy. But I thought to myself, self, back when Donald Trump was running for president, Paul Manafort was his campaign manager, and a document, the infamous Black Ledger, came out of Ukraine. And that document had information that basically said that Paul Manafort was involved in some kind of chicanery with Russian intelligence, right? And Trump fired had to fire Manafort, and then they went after him. They charged him with crimes. They did the usual lawfare to go after Manafort, right? And then as soon as Trump got elected, what the hell am I wearing this thing for? I don't know. I got just a little a doggone thing that goes around my neck that you snap your keys on it. But at any rate, so my point being, as soon as Trump got elected, Ukraine came out and said, that Black Ledger was not real. It was false. So just ignore that thing. So it was obvious that the Democrats utilized their Ukraine project to go after Trump. They utilized Ukraine, and a lot of crap was coming out of Ukraine going after Trump, right? So I thought to myself, perhaps that's a Ukrainian bullet. Perhaps those are Ukrainian bullets. Perhaps there's a crazy person from Ukraine who just happened to wander in here and decide that, Trump, you're trying to cut off our money. That was the first thing that popped into my mind. I thought about that. I'm not saying it happened, but I thought about that. I'm trying to think what's going on here. Who could be behind this? Those are, what I'm saying? I was brainstorming at the time. Now I'm not taking any positions whatsoever. I'm just saying that popped into my mind. And then, of course, I thought about JFK and RFK. I thought about all the people who, including me, who said, are they going to try to rub Trump out? Are they going to try to do him in? Trump better watch his back. I thought about Robert Fico, the head guy from Slovakia. He's a lefty, old school lefty socialist. So naturally, I'd like him, right? But he's a very reasonable, responsible guy. He's friends with Orban. Orban's a right-wing conservative, right? But they're both wise men who said, hey, man, we don't want this Ukraine war. We don't want this instability. We want peace. And we want to look out for the people in our country so they can get cheap energy and live their lives. Two very wise men. You don't have to like Fico and his lefty socialist ways, though I happen to. You don't have to dislike Orban or like him in his conservative right wing ways. I don't dislike the man. His country's conservative, and they if it's a conservative country, they should have a conservative leader. And if Slovakia is of a more lefty socialist nature, they should have a leader that represents the ideology that the people want, right? So both of the guys look out for him. But I just thought to myself, as soon as Fico got plugged, I said to myself, Orban better watch his back, right? So I put all that together and I just thought, makes me suspicious. That's all. So we'll see what comes out. Okay, so let's talk about, so that's just my thoughts. You know, if you shoot at a bear, you better kill a bear, because otherwise the bear's going to be pissed. And Trump, what's interesting is this happened. Trump, got shot in the ear. Man, what a I don't know what to call it. Trump goes down. He's shot in the ear. He comes up. He's the tough guy. He doesn't even look like he's hurt, and he says USA, USA, and people are chanting USA, and he's doing the whole superhero thing, right? Just from a visual perspective, that's powerful visual perspective. The Democrats, these clowns, are looking like the idiots they are. A couple of things I want to touch on, right? Number one, let's start with January 6th, right? Which, to me, if I look at it, I seem to think there was more FBI agents in the crowd than there were MAGA people, right? And January 6th, I'm going to be honest with you. To me, I know, like, my one friend, Max Blumenthal, was there. I know people that were there, and they just basically said these were a bunch of right-wing people, right? They have a right to that ideology, who wandered around. The cops opened the friggin' door and said, right this way. They went in, they took pictures with the cops. The most you can say is trespassing. Would it be illegitimate to say they trespassed? I would argue you couldn't even get them for trespassing because the cops opened the friggin' door. Hey, right this way. How the hell is that trespassing? The cops moved the barricades, opened the door. Hey, right this way. Ask them. Hey, where's Nancy Pelosi's office? Go right there to the left. Go a little bit up there. But make sure now, if you not feeling good, you can take an elevator. They gave directions on how to go places. And all of a sudden, we're supposed to believe that these were mad maniacs trying to overthrow the country, but they were unarmed, right? I think somebody pooped in somebody's office or something. Certainly, that's unacceptable. And like stole somebody's computer. Those kind of things are unacceptable. But the people who did it should be held accountable. The rest of them, I really don't even think they should be charged. Anybody should have been charged with trespassing because the cops opened the friggin' doors and let them in. Okay. I say all that to say this. I say all that to say this. The whole picture that was drawn was that they were trying to overthrow the country and stop our democracy, which we don't have a democracy. We don't have a republic. We've got an oligarchy. And they were trying to do all this. Kind of goes out the window now, doesn't it, with the shooting of Trump? That Trump was a guy, and Trump was behind it. He had an attempt to overthrow the government, to destabilize the government, all this kind of crap, right? And that his goal is as a chaos agent to create chaos, to overthrow everything, to undermine everything, all this kind of crap, right? But Trump got shot. And what has he been saying? Has he been saying, yeah, let's go get him. Let's overthrow the government. Get your guns out. Let's fight. Time to go. What is he saying? Trump is saying, he's saying trying to fight per se, but politically speaking. But what is he saying? It's time for unity. Trump is doing the opposite of what they said January 6th was about, of what they said for years and years that his whole thing was about. Now, again, I'm a lefty. Ideologically, my ideology doesn't align with Trump, but I'm just trying to evaluate this from an unbiased perspective. I'm not an anti-Trumper. I'm not a pro-Trumper. But I'm just saying the whole argument that Trump was some kind of agent of chaos that just wanted to overthrow the government and destabilize everything goes kind of out the window when a guy gets plugged and he's like, yeah, we got to do a unity thing. You know what? I was just going to do I was going to, now he says he was going to do a speech where he ripped Biden, but he's changed and the speech is going to be about unity. It really kind of throws the whole thing about he's an unstable agent of chaos out the window. Also, a couple other things. Avril Haines came out the other day with the old Trump is Russian bot stuff. Yes, we have evidence that Russia's going to try to interfere with the election, apparently on behalf of Trump, right? They got to stop that crap now, don't they? I don't know if they will. They got to at least tone it down. I mean, it was nothing but lies for years after years. Russiagate, people were prosecuted for it. They violated every stinking law you can think of to go after Trump because they hated him. And now every bit of it, here's the thing about it, every bit to show that it was just an intelligence operation, every single bit of Russiagate has been debunked. There's nothing left of it. Every part of Russiagate has been proven to be false, has been proven to be lies. Yet a lot of Democrats still believe it, and they don't even understand why they believe it. There's a lot of, I've heard Democrats, yeah, Trump was a traitor. He worked for Russia. And when I say, well, what part of Russiagate still stands? I mean, every single bit of it has been debunked. Everything, single bit of it has been proven false. Tell me part of Russiagate that hasn't been proven false, and they can't answer it. They can't answer it because they don't know, because they don't believe in Russiagate because it's true, because they have evidence, because they understand and believe it. They believe in Russiagate as a matter of faith. It's like a religious cult kind of thing. Well, the people that lead my cult have said that Trump is a Russian bot for the last 8 years. Would they lie to me like they did about everything else? So the bottom line is, after all of this time of saying Russia, and what did that mean? Let me go this. What did Russiagate turn into? Trump is a traitor. He's a traitor to our nation, right? He works for a foreign entity. Well, doesn't that kind of imply what happens to traitors? They get hung. It implies that you want violence taken against them. What about Kathy Griffin stand around with a fake Trump's severed Trump head with blood, ketchup all over it? That's supposed to be blood, kind of decapitating Trump in effigy. What about all the statements that were made? We should put a bullet in Trump. What about David Aronovich? Literally tweeted on July 1st, literally, he's a BBC presenter. He literally tweeted, Biden should murder Trump. Perhaps Biden was reading Twitter that night. Perhaps he finally remembered something. But you get my point, all jokes aside, that the rhetoric has been over the top. It has been incendiary. It has been pushing for violence. And we're at a point now where people are starting to bring that up. You know, AOC was out there a couple months ago, right? And she started using this term all the time, stochastic terrorism, right? And people were like, what the hell? You've come up with a new word. What the hell is that? Stochastic, right? And so what they were saying is stochastic terrorism is where you say something that motivates others to the violence, that violence violence arises from things that you say, whether intentional or unintentional. So you're responsible for this. You say something and somebody commits a terrorist act or a violent act, and therefore you're responsible. You created that. Remember stochastic terrorism, right? That was their thing. I got a funny feeling we ain't going to hear about that anymore. When people are like, yeah, we got to shoot Trump, kill Trump, eliminate Trump. One guy said we're going to have to put a bullet in Trump. And, you know, I might add one other weird thing. So Trump claims that he wants to get a deal in Ukraine. Even if he doesn't, at least he wants to get a deal in Ukraine. Hey, that's better than what we got now, who want to kill us all as a result of a nuclear war over Ukraine. But the bottom line is this. You know, I was thinking about this too, because the things never get more strange. The kid who shot Trump was in a BlackRock advertisement. You know, you just can't make this stuff. You can't write a script for this. He was in a BlackRock advertisement, and BlackRock stands to lose a lot of money because they bought up half of freaking Ukraine, right? That was part of the game. So who knows? I don't know. I'll leave that to people on the internet to pretend as though they know. I know it was a fill in the blank, right? I guarantee you it was a false flag. Trump was behind it. Biden was behind it. The CIA was behind it. People know beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty what it is. I don't know beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty what it is. I do know at this point, I got to ask, why the hell was there a ladder up against the building? Guy climbs up a ladder and shit. How does that happen? I have been involved. I got to think back. I've been involved in my career. I was involved in setting up the security measures for a nuclear power plant, Calvert Cliffs nuclear power plant. I was involved in setting up the security measures for a LNG in the Chesapeake Bay, Cove Point LNG, liquefied natural gas. They got a big thing in the bay, right? A big pier and these gigantic things that they put the LNG in and pipes that run from it and all. I was involved in that. I was involved in, as I said, Dick Cheney, and I've been involved in a lot of things working with the federal government agencies, blah, 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 on various security details. I would think that you'd want to make sure there were no ladders leaning up against buildings that would be sniper points. I think that's like elementary. I think that's like one of the things you don't even have to write down. Nobody has to write down, hey, who's the guy that's going to wander around to all the buildings where snipers could possibly be and make sure there's no ladders leaning against them. You don't have to have signs. That's a given. I would think that if the snipers were looking around at the building and then they went, hey, there's a ladder leaning up against that. Who the hell put that ladder there? That somebody would go get the ladder and move it. You got to walk by the ladder. You got to see the ladder. Or if the guy brought it with him, what did he bring? Like a Home Depot foldable ladder and get out of his car? No. Who was that guy? Oh, there's a guy walking up the street. He's got a ladder in one hand and a high-powered sniper rifle in the other hand. Really? What should we do, sir? Go give him a hand. That's a heavy ladder. We wouldn't want the guy. He can pull a muscle, for God's sake. He could trip and hurt himself. Go give him a hand. Help him set up the ladder. Move on about your business. Based on my career, I'd probably say that's problematic, to say the least. Just throwing that out there. That's a question that needs to be answered, and I don't see an answer for it. I don't see a legitimate answer for the ladder question, we'll call it. The ladder. And the guy on the roof, and apparently the snipers are like, it's looking at, you're snipers on a higher roof. You can look on the roof. And it was like a light colored roof. And there's a guy crawling around on it with a gun. And the people are on the ground who don't have a scope are like, hey, look at that. There's a freaking guy on the roof. And the people over here with a high-powered scope, for some reason, they can't pick up the guy on the roof. They don't even have a person that says, hey, we only got one building with no sniper on it. And conveniently, that's the building that also had a ladder. And that's the only, for some reason, the guy chose the only building with no sniper and a ladder. You got to ask yourself, how do these strange things, strange coincidences all come together in such an untimely manner for Donald Trump? That's all I'm saying. Anyway, I got sidetracked. So let's continue. A couple of things I think. I think that, here's an interesting thing. Let me throw this because this is directly related. I believe, let me find it. I just saw it a second ago. I don't see it. Darn it. Maybe it's somewhere else. All right. There's an article that I just had a few minutes ago. There we go. Let's take a look at this article here, which I think is related. Monday, guess who's running his filthy little money stolen yap? Zelensky expects Russia to attend second Ukraine conference in November. Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky said on Monday that he expected Russia to attend the second conference in Ukraine, which is scheduled to be held in November. Early in July, so he goes on. After these 3 points, if they work out a plan for the implementation of all points will be completed. I set the task so that in November we will have a drawn up plan. Everything will be ready for the second summit. We'll be ready to hold the second summit as soon as possible. And I believe that Russian representatives should be present at the second summit, Zelensky said. So that's today. So what do you know? The guy who said we can never talk with Russia, they've got to give everything back, including the Donbass. They've got to agree to be to give up the Kremlin, allow us to move Nazis in the Red Square, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, Trump gets shot, stands up, pumps his fist in the air a couple of times. Everybody goes, hoo, hoo, hoo. Well, there goes Joe Biden, the Democrats' chance of winning. And Zelensky mysteriously 2 days later comes up and says, perhaps all of that business about killing Putin and taking over Russia, maybe I was a little bit out of line with that. Come to think of it, in November, conveniently after Trump beats the snot out of Biden at the polls, I think we can talk to Putin, even though they've literally passed a law that says he can't talk to Putin. He says, and this is what he says. He believes that Russian representatives should be present at the second summit, right? Which means probably somebody from another country, from his perspective, somebody from another country who's going to speak on Russia's behalf. Well, first of all, Ukraine they'll be lucky if there still is a Ukraine in November, for starters, because it's getting beaten and battered to shreds. Secondly, I don't know if he understands this, but Russia's actually winning the war. And if Russian representatives show up in November, they'll have a document for him. And that document will say, unconditional surrender, Vladimir Zelensky and Joe Biden sign here. That's the only representative they're getting from Russia. But the point being that made this, and that is that Vladimir Zelensky seems to be changing his tune. And I believe that a whole lot of other people in Ukraine are going to change their tunes. Look, it's a corrupt country. Corrupt, corrupt, corrupt. And people who are corrupt don't care. They're just trying to make all the money they can any way they can. And so now when they look up and they say, okay, Biden was our boy, but Biden's gone. We made all the money we can. Biden funneled $200 billion over here, and we stole every dime of it we could. So now the only question becomes, how can we keep the money that we stolen? That's it. How can we keep it? We stole this money. How can we keep our money? So guess what? They're going to get on the horn with Donald Trump. Hey, Donald, yeah, all that stuff that happened in the past, all this your Russian bot stuff, people say things when they're angry. But to tell you what, looks like you're going to be president. I think we can work out a deal. What is it that you want anyway? We just like to hear you out, hear what you'd want, what you'd like us to do, and perhaps we could work out some kind of a deal. We talked to Viktor Orban when he was in Kiev, and then he went to Moscow, and then he went to Beijing. We understand what's going on here, and we'd like to play a part in that. We like you. That old stupid Joe Biden. No, who likes that guy anyway? He's an idiot. We never liked him. He doesn't know his butt from a hole in the ground. So forget Joe Biden. That was last year. That's so 2024. We'd like to move forward to 2025. And tell you the truth, our guys, the Russians may have considered that some of our guys did something that they may not like and they may want to prosecute. If you somehow in this deal could put in a good word for us to maybe stop the Russians from prosecuting, putting ropes around our stinking necks and throwing them over a tree, that would be kind. That would be very beneficial. And in return, we have some very interesting information about Joe and Hunter and a number of other people in the Democratic Party, maybe even a few in the Republican Party, who have, shall we say, made their fortunes in Ukraine. So, have we done things that we're ashamed of? Hasn't everybody? People in life do things that in hindsight, they look backwards and they say, that wasn't a good idea. But Joe Biden tried to get you. What if we could hand you some information on Joe Biden? and the Bidens and some other people that you don't like all that much that tried to do you dirty. And we were against it all the time. I mean, we were always telling them, they're like, we're going to get Trump. And we're like, no, that's not a good idea. We are not on board. We like Joe. We like Mr. Trump. We don't want to get him. But, they twisted our arms. Donald, what were we going to do? You understand the game. But here's what we're trying to do now. We're trying to bury the old hatchet, shall we say. So here's what we're going to do. We got boxes of paperwork. It's got Hunter Biden on all kinds of COVID in labs, in 46 bio research labs, Victoria Nuland, Blinken, you name it. We got the filth on all of these clowns. So let's just get right to it. Don't let the Russians hang us. Let us keep our ill-gotten gains in all of our shell companies. And let us move to our villas in the south of France. And in return, we'll give you everything you need to string up Biden and every frickin' body that's dear to him. His whole group is dirty, and we'll give you everything. I think that's the kind of thing that happens. Because let's face it, they're a bunch of crooks in Ukraine. They got their money. They want to keep their money. And there's a new sheriff in town. They don't have any motivation to continue supporting Biden because he's done. He's a lame duck as far as they're concerned. And they're going to, you know who else they're going to call? The Russians. They're going to call the Russians. Hey, Vlad, we've been out of line calling you all kinds of names and stuff like that. But look, we apologize. Maybe we killed a civilian here or there, whatever the case may be. It happens. It's war, okay? We're ready to move forward. And we got boxes and boxes of info, data that you may be interested in agree for not hanging us and turn this over to the people of Donetsk and Lugansk because we could get skinned alive. But wouldn't it be much better for you if we gave you all the dirt you needed? And we worked with NATO. We got their frequencies. We got their inside information. We can connect you to their networks, their satellites, everything they got, everything they've done, man. We can put you paid, brother. We can put you paid. You just got to make sure that we can walk. Nobody gets hanged. Nobody has to be in trouble. All old times are forgotten. No fuss, no muss. You know what the Russians will say? Show me what you got. We can talk. Why wouldn't they? The FSB will say, we're here to cut your friggin' fingers off one at a time. But we're ready to do business. Let me see what you got. See, that's what I've said this all along. That's what the Biden administration is really afraid of. They're dirty. And let me add this. Inside the Biden administration, in the FBI and a lot of other places, there are people who are not happy with the corruption, who are not happy with the policies, who would like to rat the Biden administration out, who would like to get revenge. What do you want to bet? Somebody might actually come out and say, Donald, you interested in some information about the Nord Stream bombing? Would you like to know? I could perhaps pass some notes around and get the right people to come knock on their door and whisper in your ear about who did what and when. Oh, Seth Rich laptop? You'd like to release that? Think about this. If Donald Trump comes to power, can't he release Seth Rich's laptop? What did the FBI say about Seth Rich's laptop? 66 years before you release that. We can't. The FBI is right now fighting in court because they don't want to release what's on Seth Rich's laptop. If Trump comes to power, he can release that. What about the background on Hunter Biden's laptop? The FBI had it. They did all kinds of stuff. They were working with Twitter and Facebook and all of that. Trump comes to power. Couldn't he technically say, I'm going to bring somebody in and do a full review of that. And we're going to release everything we find. All of the stuff that came from the Biden White House, where they did ins around the First Amendment. Now, I'm not saying that Trump's going to do it. He may not. He's wounded and he's angry. Man, if you shoot at a bear and you wing the bear, you just pissed off that bear and he's going to charge. And when that bear gets to you, he's going to tear you limb from limb. And I would think if somebody shot me, I might want revenge. And I think as rotten as the Biden administration is, as corrupt as the Biden administration is, there's a lot that this is the big problem the Biden administration has. There's a lot of people on the inside who are probably disgusted with Joe Biden, who, if given the opportunity, will raise their hand and say, we need to talk, brother. Now, here's what's even worse for the Biden administration. It's starting to look like the Republicans might have the Senate and the House. Right now, they got the House, but the Senate and the House, what does that mean? That means they can do all kinds of investigations, can't they? They can look in anything they want. Rand Paul might say, we need to look a little bit more into this Fauci dude. We need to look at Fauci's emails. We need to see who he talked to. We need to understand what happened, how this COVID thing happened. What's up with all of this mysterious vaping disease that hit just before COVID? Isn't that weird? Rand Paul's the type, he may ask that. He may say, it's kind of weird. The first week of August, they shut down Fort Detrick, a place where they work on all kinds of weird viruses and things like that. They just shut Fort Detrick down the beginning of August. And within a week or two, a mysterious vaping disease popped up that had the same symptoms as COVID. And then suddenly, they began a pandemic response in September when there was no pandemic. And suddenly, they had a pandemic exercise called Event 201 in October, but there was no pandemic. And the pandemic exercise was modeled around a coronavirus outbreak. And then in November, there was a coronavirus outbreak. Who could have saw that coming? Perhaps Rand Paul may say we need to look at this vaping disease. What the hell? Maybe. I'm not saying he will. I'm not saying he won't. I'm saying that those kinds of things are possibilities that have the likes of Fauci and a lot of other people horrified at what could possibly happen. Twitter and Facebook, right? What did they do? Apparently, Facebook and Instagram, you know what they've announced? They're relaxing the, what do you call it? They're relaxing the restrictions on Trump now after he's got shot. You know why? Because they figure he's going to get elected. And he has a pretty good insurance policy. He's got J.D. Vance. When he chose J.D. Vance, all along I thought, boy, if they choose, if he chooses, Marco Rubio or one of these other neocons, he'll be dead in a day. As soon as he swears in, he won't even get sworn in on the Bible. Do you, Donald Trump, agree to execute the duties of the President of the United States? Yes, I do. Pow! He's done. Oh, well, yes, it's Lindsey Graham's the president. Whoever the hell his vice president neocon was, it would be suicide to choose a neocon. He chose J.D. Vance. I think J.D. Vance is somewhat of is an insurance policy for Trump, in that they if there's anybody they probably want in power less than J.D. Vance, to get less than Trump, it's J.D. Vance. And he's 39, young guy, which means he can still serve, 2 terms, right? So as soon as Trump officially becomes the nominee, if some untoward activity happens and for whatever reason Trump can't serve as president, J.D. Vance becomes the nominee. You see what I'm saying? So he is a bit of an insurance policy for Trump. I'm a lefty, so I don't ideologically align with those guys, but I think they'd be better than Biden, because Biden's trying to kill us all in a region, in a nuclear war. You know what I mean? Look, we can work out our ideological differences later if we're alive. Anybody see The Matrix? You remember at one point Neo, who was, what's his name? The other Morpheus said that Neo's the one, kind of the savior figure and all that that was prophesied. He's the one, right? And the guy who was the traitor said, well, Morpheus says he's the one, just before he was getting ready to try to kill Neo unsuccessfully. But he said, but how can he be the one if he's dead? And he tried to kill him, and it didn't work, right? And that's the same concept, you know what I mean? How can Trump do anything if he's dead? But now you got J.D. Vance, and they can't do Trump in because it won't help them much. I mean, I guess they could shoot a plane down. I put it like this: both of those guys shouldn't fly in the same plane. Not a good idea. Fly in separate planes. One plane, well, a missile comes up and that plane goes down, and they've done away. They've killed two for one. But this way, Trump has a bit of an insurance policy. I worry a bit about J.D. Vance, that he could be a guy who is one of those, yeah, we don't go after Russia. China's really the one we need to go after, guarantee nuclear war. And at this point, I don't think that matters for this reason. Russia has said today, let me find it. Russia has said today that they refuse to be a bystander. Let me see if I can. It's Russia. They have said, I don't see it here. Okay, Russia has defined its Asia strategy. Moscow is not interested in merely being a bystander in the China-U.S. conflict. So it's branching out, right? That's an article. So the bottom line is, and they even have in this article, in the context of a series of major military and political crises involving the major powers, the viability of international institutions that have acted as the main agents of political globalization in recent years is being called into question. So bottom line is, Russia has significantly reoriented its foreign economic relations towards Asia in recent years. This has been stimulated by the conflict with the West, its sanctions pressure. So the bottom line is, Russia's saying we're aligned with the East, man. So if you're going to go after China, we're in for a dollar, in for a dime. They're in because they understand the bottom line, and that is that this is about world domination. The problem that the deep state, the problem that the neocons, the problem that the imperialists have with Trump is this: he has a different brand of imperialism. Their brand is complete and total world domination. No deals with anybody, ever, ever, ever. We don't make deals with anybody. People do what we tell them to do, or we crush them mercilessly, right? Where Donald's like, hey, Trump's like, he wants a deal. He wants a deal. And here's the problem. In order to get a deal, you have to use strategic empathy. In other words, in order to get a deal, you got to understand what the other guy wants, and you have to give him some of what he wants. You get some of what you want. That's a deal. The way the neocons, the way the Biden, the Blinkens, the Sullivans see it, we don't make deals. We don't give anybody what they want. Everybody does what we tell them to do, or we crush them mercilessly. And then they'll do what we do anyway, what we want anyway. Well, they don't have the political, military, or economic wherewithal to carry that out, to affect that kind of a dominant world ideology, but they don't know it, so they're still trying to pretend as though they do. They're living in this dream world narrative. Trump just wants a deal here and there. I ain't trying to say Trump's some great guy or a brilliant statesman. I'm just saying he's a different animal, and they don't like that. And it doesn't work for their worldview. Their worldview doesn't allow for deals. It only allows for domination. Trump wanted a deal in North Korea. That's not part of the big plan. The big plan of world domination means world domination. You can't get a deal with North Korea and recognize the leader of North Korea as a legitimate leader with legitimate interests. In order to get a deal, I have to recognize. See, here's the big part of it. Trump wants to get a deal. In order to get a deal, I have to recognize that you have legitimate interests, right? It's the only way to get a deal. This is what I want. What do you want? I want this. Now, let's not forget, it would be disastrous for the neocon world domination project to get a deal with Ukraine. Why? Because you've got to utilize Ukraine to try your best to hurt Russia. And you can never back down. You can never give up on that. You can never have a reverse gear. We're just going to keep pouring everything into Ukraine. We can't give up on it because it would be humiliation to give up. You never lose. You never give up. You just keep pushing forward. You must win and dominate. Trump's like, yeah, let's get a deal. Get the hell out of there. Move on, right? If, in fact, Trump gets a deal, the Russians, what is it that they want? They want a security deal with Russia. I mean, with Europe. They want a deal where the Russians sit down with the Americans and the Europeans and they say, how can we get a deal where we don't fight, where everybody's happy, everybody's healthy, we go our separate ways. Well, that will also mean that the Europeans don't have to build and buy fighter jets and stuff from the US 24 hours a day, that they can actually spend some money on their people, that NATO can't run around saying we have to protect you. Once they have a security deal, let me ask you this, although NATO's existence is a lie, the Russians want a European security deal. Once they get a European security deal, what the hell do they need NATO for? In fact, if you read the NATO communique, whatever the hell you want to call it, statement from last week's NATO meeting, it's sheer and utter madness. It is warmongering, bellicosity, it is belligerent, and they're like, yeah, this is how we're going to take out everybody in the world and dominate the whole world. You read that. Well, that does not align with Trump getting a deal, does it? It doesn't align with Trump finding a way to get a deal whatsoever. Instead, it aligns with world domination. So if Trump gets a deal and gets a security arrangement with the Russians at that point, or at least, first of all, if he tries to, that means he has to sit down and talk with them. He has to meet with them. He has to acknowledge that they're humans, that they have a legitimate cause for concern. He has to acknowledge their causes for concern. And then in the discussions, when the Russians say, I want this, and they give a, you know how the Russians are, they're going to give a clearly articulated statement on what it is they have problems with. These are the points that we know how the Russians are. They're very businesslike, right? They're very straightforward. And they're going to say, here's a list of what we want. Provide in writing with a list of what you want. Here's what we're willing to do. Provide in writing what your requests are, and we will respond in writing. That's the way the Russians do things, right? And Trump's going to look at it and say, maybe we can do this or that. He's going to meet with the Europeans, and it may be made public. And the people might look at it and say, hey, son of a bitch, that ain't all that bad. Maybe we can do that. It's problematic. Now you've acknowledged that the Russians are human beings, that they're not just crazy, evil monsters. And you've talked to them. You can't do that. What about all that spin that they're demons that must be stopped? What about all the crazy things going on now where they're like outlawing, even saying perhaps the Russians have a point, or we should, or you should be able to say, if you want, I support the Russians or I don't support the Russians. You can't even say that. They'll lock you up in some countries in Europe for that. What about all the anti-Russia rhetoric in here that they're making a living off, that all these think tanks are making a fortune off? What about all these think tanks that are getting all this money right now? These neocon think tanks that are getting money from the State Department, the CIA, et cetera, and their money bags might, and they were all the anti-Trumpers, their money bags might be cut off. FBI, we know how crooked the FBI is. What happens if Trump says, I'm putting my people in charge? They're worried. They're concerned. They're sitting there saying, what are we going to do? We can't let this guy be president, but we can't stop him either. What do we do? So the game is a totally different game. Rest assured of one thing. I keep saying this, there's no honor amongst thieves, right? The Europeans may be, oh, we love Biden, we're afraid Trump will become the power, blah, blah, blah. But the minute they are convinced that Trump will become the power, the minute they all look at themselves and they say, this thing's over, Biden's going to lose, they'll do the same thing as the Ukrainians. They'll call Trump's people, hey, man, we want to bury the hatchet. We know we've said things. We know we've done things. And you know we've said things, and you know we've done things. Time to put that behind us. We got to make things work, Donald Trump. And it looks like you're going to be the president. We'd like to bury the hatchet. And the way they'll bury the hatchet, I think, is a lot of them is stab Biden in the back. What are they going to hang? Do you really think that these crooked, corrupt jerks, puppets, are going to hang with Biden when he's out of power? When Trump comes, if let's just say this, if Trump comes to power, do you think the European puppets are going to say, we're going to defy the president of the United States and we're going to stick with the old demented guy who's out of power now? There's not a chance in hell that that's going to happen. What they're going to do is say, there's a new sheriff in town and his name's Donald Trump. Get me Donald Trump on the line. I guarantee you this. Donald Trump's people, their uh, um, their phones are smoking. Now, somebody said Graham just traveled with Trump. Not a good sign. Yeah, look. Graham was a guy who was opposed to Trump and blah blah blah. They're all going to be gathering around. That's what you're going to see. They're all going to be gathering around Trump. They're going to be sucking up to Trump. The anti-Trumpers, we hate Trump. He's the worst. He must be stopped. And now they're going to be calling Trump's phone. Hey, guys. Hi there. Hey, Donald. You know, I've always loved you. I've supported you all along. Man, I had said a few things in the past that probably, alcohol, you know how it is. You have a few too many to drink, you know. I was out of my head. But now you're going to be president, and I got you, bro. I got you, man. I got your back. I'm looking out for you. I'm your wingman. Dude. So, you know, let's talk. Perhaps you could consider me for a position in your cabinet or something. They're all sucking up. Lindsey Graham, all of them, they're all sucking up to Trump. And let me tell you something. Trump's going to play it for all it's worth. You know, Trump loves to be sucked up too. But the issue is this, and I don't have answers to this. I'm not trying to turn Trump into some superhero. I'm not trying to turn Trump into some good guy who's going to do the right thing. No, I'm not. I don't believe that for 1 second. But I think Trump is something different. I'll put it like this. As much as I don't think he's as much of a threat to the empire as I would like, I think the empire thinks he's a threat to the empire because they can't even afford a little teeny thing. The empire is so brittle that it's such a house of cards. They can't afford Trump to just come in and say, let's get a deal in North Korea, man. Let's get a deal in Ukraine. Let's get a deal here. Let's get a deal there. They can't afford Trump to get a deal anywhere because it fractures the belief that they have of the narcissistic, sociopathic belief of total world domination. It fractures that completely. Let's look. Let's do this. Getting a little long in the tooth here. And I don't even know if any of that stuff made sense. I tell you what, I sure had fun on Galloway's show the other day. That was a blast. Not a lot of super chats, but I'm looking because if there are any, I only saw one. Oh, we got some super chats. I want to make sure they're answered. We always get good questions. John M says, this is a test. Hey, you pass, John. If it's a test, you get an A. How's that? All right. Red Chili Pepper. Super sticker. Thanks a lot, Red Chili Pepper. Let's keep going. Kill Your Egregor says, where were the drones? You know, there's just question after question in there. That I can't get over that ladder. A ladder. If I came home and there was a ladder leaning up against my house, I'd be, what the hell? What? No, get rid of this ladder. Who put a ladder up against my house? Isn't JD Vance becoming a little neocon? I don't know. I'm going to keep an eye on him. I don't trust any of them. Don't trust any of them. But you got to start somewhere. And I think if they start working on a deal in Ukraine and they have to deal with Putin, that's a step in the door. And Putin may try to say, well, we got to bring in China and India to get this deal. You know what I mean? He may try to play it up. So I don't know what can happen. I'll put it like this. I'd rather move in the direction of peace than away from peace. But again, I don't trust JD Vance, Trump. I don't trust any of them. Let's look on Rockfin. Is anybody on Rockfin? Oh, there we go. Somebody on Rockfin. There we go. Drew Tex on Rockfin says, do we know for sure if this was legit an assassination attempt because Trump, or if it was all political theater to push Trump forward because they could use Trump's popularity as a way to boost the desperate empire and increase troop numbers? Who? I mean, that's the question. Who are you saying political theater? Okay. Some kid shot at Trump. Trump was hit by a bullet, apparently. There's like literally pictures of the bullets going by. I believe Trump was shot. I don't think Trump's William Tell, where he's going to stick an apple on his head and say, try to shoot it with a, try to shoot it with a, um, with an arrow or something. I don't for one second believe that Trump's like, yeah, here's the plan. I want somebody to take a high powered rifle and shoot at my head, but just miss me barely by a little bit. That's the plan. That ain't a good plan. And a lot of things Trump is, but I don't think he's stupid. I believe that there was an assassination attempt against Trump. Now, the question is, was it a lone wolf or was it a deep state operation? Well, I don't know. We may never know. There are people now who think they know. I ain't one of them, but I have some questions. Some very legitimate questions about a freaking ladder leaning up against the roof that the perpetrator used to climb up. There's something fishy about that ladder. That's all I can say, amongst like 50 other things. What's this guy doing in a BlackRock advertisement? You couldn't make this up. Okay. Why did Trump not get Dr. Ben Carson to be his VP? Well, let's face it. JD Vance is already in the Senate or whatever, and he's in Ohio. So he gets to bring JD Vance, who is a senator. He brings him in, and Ohio has Mike DeWine. Think about this. Here's the issue that people have to think about when he's choosing, right? And that is, ideally, if you choose as being a Republican, if he chooses a senator from a state with a Republican governor, guess what? He gets to take that guy into his administration, and the Republican governor gets to appoint the replacement, and the Republicans still maintain that seat in the Senate, right? So that is part of the strategy. Again, JD Vance is in Ohio. That is a state that he needs. So from a strategic perspective, he got a senator from a state that he needs that could possibly be close. And the state has a Republican governor, which means that the Republicans still maintain that seat in the Senate, and that helps them to keep the Senate. So from a strategic perspective, it makes sense that he would choose a guy. And Ben Carson, let's face it, he's never been a politician. He doesn't have any background in politics. Who knows how he would do or what he would say in a battle with a debate with what's her name, Harris. And how old is he? Let's do this. Let's find this out. Ben Carson, age 72. So Ben Carson's not, no spring chicken by any stretch of the imagination. So we got a guy who's a senator. They get to keep the Senate seat. The guy's 39 years old. So what do you got? You got Biden, who's old as a ghost. Biden, a guy who's so old they didn't even have history class when he was in high school because nothing had happened yet. But all jokes aside, even there, it's a joke about his age, and I don't want to do that because I don't want to imply that Biden's issue is his age. What I would say is this: Biden's issue has nothing to do with his age. I know plenty of people that are older than Biden that are sharp as a nail. Biden has some kind of a cognitive impairment. A buddy of mine, his ex-wife got Alzheimer's or whatever it is at like 51 and died at like 55. Okay. So the reality of it is that you don't have to be any particular age. I mean, somebody could have a head injury and be 10 years old. And as a result of a brain traumatic, what is it, TMB, as a result of a traumatic brain injury, they could have cognitive decline at the age of 10, at the age of 5. All you got to do is get hit in the head with something hard and you're going to have issues. So Joe Biden's issue is not his age, and I don't want to pretend that it is. It's about cognitive decline as a result of whatever it is. Some believe it's Parkinson, the stiffness that he has, So, in fact, I know a guy, the guy that did my taxes, has Parkinson's, wonderful guy. And over the course of time, because of the medication now that he doesn't have the shake, the medication suppresses some of the stuff. So he didn't shake. But I haven't seen him in a while. My buddy told me he saw him, and he says he has trouble maintaining a train of thought, that he'll be okay sometimes, similar to what we saw from Joe Biden having trouble maintaining a train of thought. There are many who suspect Joe Biden has Parkinson's. I don't know what he has. I don't know, but I do know could just be some kind of a mental decline. But, he ain't all there, dude. That dude is not all there. Are the Democrats going to replace him? What's the point at this time? What are you going to stick Kamala Harris out there? You think Joe Biden makes you look bad? You stick Kamala Harris out there, people will be like, what in the hell? Bring back Joe Biden. You know what they'll do? They'll beg the same Democrats that are saying we want Kamala Harris. When they listen to a couple of her soliloquies, they'll be like, yeah, perhaps we should go back to Joe Biden. I mean, the guy's got dementia, but I mean, this is taking things a little too far. This poor woman is she doesn't need dementia. At any rate. So, yeah, Ben Card, no thanks. Let's see a couple other things. Somebody said Trump actually had a black girlfriend and she broke off the relationship because Trump wanted to have kids and she did not. So please explain how he's racist. I don't know anything about that. I've never heard that story. And the people are always talking about who's racist and who isn't. Big Boy could not even reach his mentor, Strom Thurmond's lifespan in Senate. Can we plagiarize his eulogy for Joe? That Joe Biden's a political thing. A political, animal. He's been corrupted. He's a fool, was always a fool with bad policies. And now, okay, America is strange. No one goes to church, but erroneous believes in God. You know what's interesting? I was talking to a friend of mine today. When Obama was running, you had a bunch of people running around saying, this is God. God has decided it's Obama and God is going to protect him and God, Obama, right? And they truly believed that God was acting. This is a fact. I can tell you right now, there were a lot of people, so-called lefties, who thought that Obama was chosen by God to change the world and change America, blah, 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 blah. Okay, which I was like, yeah, I don't know. You know what I always say about that, right? When people say, I'm doing God's work, I always say the same thing. Well, if God's so powerful, what the hell does he need you for? I'm not a particularly religious guy, but it's like God needs me to do this. Well, he can't do it on his own. Like could God just like blink his eyes if he had eyes and say that's going to be the way it is? People are like, God can do anything but fail. Okay, and God needs me to go fix this. Yeah, couldn't he do it himself? I mean, what the hell does he need you for, right? So God chose Obama to change things. Well, couldn't God just say things are changed and they're changed? Blink his eyes. If he has godly eyes, boink, things are different. Kind of like I Dream of Jeannie, right? Elizabeth Eden. What was her name? Elizabeth? No, I'm thinking of Elizabeth Montgomery. Barbara Eden, right? Couldn't he just go boink? Or move his nose or something like Elizabeth Montgomery and it's all done? What the hell do they need you for? Likewise, God now has decided that it's Trump if you're a conservative, right? And I'm like, yeah, I've been on that line before. God chose Obama. Now God's chosen Trump. Man, God sure has a wide array of ideological people that he's supporting. Why don't he just do it himself? He's God. Who knows? But people are always going to be convinced, right? The old, what is it? The divine intervention. When things go in the way that people think they should go, God did it, right? So that's good enough for me. Sparky says, notice all of a sudden Biden's calling Trump by his first name, Donald. Sounds like Joe has a guilty conscience. Yeah, that's funny. I talked to Donald today. Just the other day, right? Did you see the debate? He's like, has his teeth gritted. You said you're the sucker. You're the sucker. I mean, I'm looking at this guy and he's talking with his teeth gritted. You're the sucker. And I'm like, dude, open your mouth. What are you gritting your freaking teeth for? You look like an old man gritting his teeth. And I don't even think they're your teeth. I think they're like purchased from a five and dime. So, I mean, literally, I don't think those are Joe Biden's teeth. I don't think he bought them somewhere. But, technically, I mean, he owns them. I mean, I think they're probably a very expensive set of dentures. So technically, there are his teeth. But I don't know why he was gritting them when he was talking to Trump. You say you're a sucker. You're a sucker. You're a whiner. I'm like, yeah, you're gritting your teeth and you look like an old man. The rest of your body's moving. And why is it you've got so much plastic face surgery that your face ain't moving? Only his mouth. You're the sucker. His mouth, his face, he turns sideways. His face is literally still, completely stiff. And his mouth is going, you're the sucker. Not a good look. That's all I'm trying to say. But at any rate, let me go on. Anybody else have anything to say? Let me look. We need to move past 3,000-year-old Bronze Age myths and superstitions as a justification for anything. Hit the like button. There you go. There's a smart guy. Ooh. Posmo says, Garland, you must know some people are lucky. Some people just have things laid out for them. All the particles arranged to bounce the right way in our deterministic universe. Think of God that way. Yeah, if it works for you, it works for me. Whatever the hell. I don't know. I don't have any answers. I'm a man who practices and studies Zen. So as far as I'm concerned, that's just as good an answer as any. If somebody says, why did it happen? It just happened. That's fine. God did it. Yeah, that's great too. It was planned out for years and numerical. I'm a numerologist and just as wonderful. Great. You know, the way I look at it, there's 10 different people that believe 10 different things, just like you walk through a forest. There's a birch tree, there's a pine tree, there's an oak tree, there's there's a dogwood tree. It is the nature of trees to be different types. It is the nature of a forest to have different kinds of trees. And it is the nature of people to have different beliefs. And so I don't try to say, well, no, everybody shouldn't believe. You shouldn't believe that God did it. You shouldn't believe that there's no God. You shouldn't believe that there is a God. In the same way that you walk through the forest, there are various types of trees. When you talk to 10 different people, there are going to be various types of belief systems. One's going to say it's divine intervention. They know it. Don't ask them otherwise. The other is going to say there's no such thing as divine intervention because there's no God. And the other is going to say, oh, yes, there is. Not only is there one God, there's 10 of them. And I've got their names right here in this little book. So let's not push back against people who want to believe things differently. All right. Let's, how about this? Among Friends says, Caitlin Johnstone, the U.S. came close to having two presidential candidates with no brain. You are correct. It was just that close. They almost got old Trumpy. But he crawled out, from under the guillotine once again. They tried to get Trump, no luck. Will they try again? Did they even try this time? Will they try again? Will what it's like an old Batman movie at the end of Batman. Will, the oak tree is a holy tree. Yeah, there we go. I agree with you 100% on that. It is a holy tree. Now, if you'd have said the pine tree is a holy tree or the dogwood tree is a holy tree, I'd have said the same thing. I absolutely agree with you. The tree is a holy tree. But so bottom line is, we'll see what happens. Just goes to show that, as we say, in politics, 6 months, 5 months, 3 months, whatever it is a long time in politics. All kinds of things can happen between then and now. All kinds of things. So we will see, my friends, my dear and fluffy friends. We shall see. Have a great day. Make sure you share this on all of your social media platforms. Certainly, you see all the stuff going across the bottom. If you are able, buy me a coffee or Cash App or one of those, or Patreon or whatever the case may be. If you can support the channel, it is highly appreciated. Even if you can't, don't worry about it. Just share this on all your social media platforms. Make sure you follow me on Telegram. Make sure you follow me at Rumble. I got Rumble. If they throw me off of YouTube, you know where to find me. I'll be right there on Rumble and Rockfin. Rockfin.com is great. Go there and join. Doesn't cost anything, but some of my shows I run for premium members, and premium members, Rockfin doesn't have any advertisements, so they allow people to be subscribers. If you can afford to be a subscriber, it's $14.99 a month. If you can't, no problem. That's okay. Just share this stuff on all your social media platforms. That's the main thing. Thanks a lot, my dear friends. Actually, I got another show Thursday night at 9:00 with Andre Martianoff and Scott Ritter, but I do have to find out what time Trump's giving his speech, because nobody on the planet's going to miss that, right? The fact that J.D. Vance had anything to do with Yale makes me unsure of him. You should be. You should be unsure of everyone. You should be unsure of everyone, even me. I have people say, well, Garland, you're a law enforcement. Why should I trust you? My answer is you shouldn't. No, absolutely don't trust me. I could be a CIA puppet for all you know. I could be reporting to my handlers even now. Hang up. All right, guys. And like the camera turns around, and instead of like in my little bedroom that's been turned into an office here, the camera turns around and I'm like at CIA headquarters. CIA guys are walking around with their cup that says, "Welcome to the CIA. Hi, my name is CIA operative." Yeah, for all you know. No, hell no. Don't trust me. Don't trust anybody. Trust yourself. Do your own research. Look into things yourself. Try to find out what's going on. And don't trust us CIA agents, man. We're up to no good. We're trying to do you dirty every time. Thanks a lot. I'm out.